Welcome to another edition of the Star Local Media Sports Podcast. My name is Matt Welch. I'm the sports editor with Star Local Media, and I am being joined by Taylor Ragland, who writes sports for Plano, Allen, and Lake Cities, as well as Brian Murphy, the sports editor for our Frisco, Little Elm, and Salina papers. And gentlemen, let's answer a couple more questions. As we've done for these past couple weeks, we're going to pull a couple entries from our summer question series and explore some of the various subplots and storylines in anticipation of the upcoming school year. Last week we talked about rivalries, student sections. If you haven't had a chance to, please check out that podcast. Some good discussion there. This week we're going to pivot to our first topic, another kind of a broad-reaching subject across high school athletics, and that is enrollment. So the question, and we actually pulled this one from last week's question series that you can check out online on our website, starlocalmedia.com. The question was, how much of a factor will enrollment play in a certain district's pecking order? And enrollment can be a controversial subject depending on what markets you're talking about, and it's I think it's kind of fitting that we have representatives from Allen, Plano, and Frisco here, because it's literally like the three different schools of thought when it comes to how to construct a school district. You have obviously Allen, which will live and die by the one high school model, even as the enrollment swells to the size of a Division I college, and then you have Plano ISD, which has 3 super high schools, all with enrollments of at least 5,000 students. And then you have Frisco ISD, which has 10 high schools, none beyond 2,100 students. So, but kind of the just a big picture as far as how it applies to athletics, because, like I said, enrollment can be a bit of a touchy subject, especially if you're in a district like the like the Plano Allen district. It's so unique in that respect, because you legitimately have the 4 largest high schools in Texas in the same district, and that's no joke. And it's the top 4 by a country mile. You have Allen, which is had the state's highest enrollment for the past 4 years. Their most recent figure was 6,664 students, and then second was Plano West at 5,654, Plano East with 5,343, and Plano Senior with 5,198. Those are the only 4 schools in Texas with enrollments beyond 5,000 kids. Taylor, you had this question last week as you kind of explored the just what kind of an impact you see enrollment having on the district's pecking order, and what were you kind of able to arrive at?
I mean, my conclusion is that obviously Allen and the PISD schools are kind of near the top in a lot of sports, just by virtue of enrollment, by virtue of having a greater number of athletes to choose from. I mean, it's simple probability. The more kids you have to choose from, the better your odds are of fielding a combination of athletes that's better than other schools. But with that said, I really don't think, especially in the last iteration of 6-6A, that enrollment beyond Allen, of course, like Allen football, because that's obviously kind of a beast of its own, played that big of a role. Because you go back and you look at all the bracket sports, Allen and PISD schools were near the top in a lot of them, but there's shocks and surprises and teams that kind of rise from the bottom basically in every sport and in every season, every year. You look at like Wiley softball. That was a really, really solid softball team, a playoff team out of 6-6A, playoff team basically every year. For them, I don't remember exactly what the stat was, but we went back.
It's like 24 years, I think.
Something ridiculous. So obviously, there's a benefit to having more students, but at the same time, as with any level of sports, there's always going to be teams that kind of rise up, and I think we may get to it later with Frisco Reedy is kind of an example of that. Like there are sometimes schools that just enrollment certainly isn't everything. It helps, just like maybe having a nice facility helps, or having a coach that's experienced success can help in certain cases. So there's things that help any team, but and enrollment is certainly one of them. But I don't think it's the end all be all for any of our districts really, because you look at teams like Wiley, like I mentioned, Lake Dallas baseball had a really good year, and they're always the smallest school in whatever district they're in. So
McKinney boys soccer dominated that district too.
Yeah.
Because we were compiling the list of district champions yesterday in 6-6A for one of the questions. I remember we were talking about it, and it was really evenly distributed amongst 6A. Allen dominated in certain things, baseball, football, stuff like that. But there was Geyer, Wiley.
Well, and it's funny you say Allen dominated in baseball, because we had that conversation nearly every week where they just kept continuing to win, but it wasn't like that team was. it wasn't like Allen
beating everybody
football.
15-2.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't like
I never saw any.
You're familiar.
no, exactly. Yeah, you wouldn't know, but
Yeah.
but it's kind of a perfect example of what I'm talking about. Like, yeah, Allen won the district in baseball, but I don't think that team was
there's parity all across that
a better
district.
collection of baseball players than any other team, especially, you know, like the PISD schools that are kind of equivalent a little bit in enrollment, and then, you know, some of the other schools, Geyer, schools like that. So I think that's actually a pretty good example of, you know, enrollment certainly isn't everything.
It's an interesting case study, and I went back just to check just what kind of impact enrollment did have on this past school year, and I used it basically by gauging how many playoff berths each of the teams in District 66A, this previous District 66A, so Allen, Plano ISD, McKinney ISD, Denton, Geyer, and Wiley, how many times each school made the playoffs. So just to kind of set the table, I mean, like we said, this district has the 4 largest high schools in Texas, and they do comprise a large chunk of the total student body within District 66A. I did actually add up the numbers between Allen and the three Plano schools. They account for almost 70% of the total enrollment in District 66A. So a massive chunk for sure. Now, how did that correlate though to success on the field? It's one thing to have the perception that, because, you know, these schools are bigger, that they had this built-in advantage, but did it really materialize that way? So I went through and checked the number of playoff berths that each school acquired over the 2017-18 school year. Now, you got to factor in, there's 8 standings-based sports, you know, volleyball, football, basketball, soccer, baseball, softball, and there's 4 playoff berths in each sport. So 32 possible playoff berths were attainable within that district. Of those 32, Allen and Plano ISD combined for 18. So
that's not as many as you think.
About 56%.
Okay.
So
I was going to say it's not 70%.
It's not. No. It's not. It definitely didn't stack up to where it was just this overwhelming advantage.
Right.
And then when you factor in that of those 18, 8 of them belong to Allen. Allen, which made the playoffs in all 8 sports, which, as far as I've been able to find out, that's the first time that has ever happened. They had just a year like no other. But yeah. So beyond that, though, that means you had 44% of the remaining playoff berths were distributed among McKinney ISD, Geyer, and Wiley. So it wasn't just this, woe is us. We have no chance. How do we ever compete with that?
And those are playoff berths too. Those aren't necessarily district championships either. It's not like Allen and PISD are out there winning every sport. I mean, it's a combination of stuff, and obviously playoff berths are the important part. I mean, you want district championships, but it's not like they're out there just distributing trophies between the 4 of them in every single sport. That never happens.
Just to rank them, so obviously Allen, like I said, Allen made the playoffs in all 8 sports. They obviously had the most as far as playoff berths go. Second place, you had a tie with 5 playoff berths last year between Denton Geyer, who's the second smallest school in District 6XA, and Plano Senior, which is the 4th largest, the smallest of the 3 Plano schools. And I say smallest in quotation marks, since they're still the 4th largest school in the state.
Not small.
So you had those 2 schools that had 5 apiece, and then behind them you had McKinney High, who's the 5th largest school in the district. They had 4 playoff berths, and then you had a tie between Plano West, the 2nd largest school, and McKinney Boyd, the 6th largest, with 3 apiece. And then rounding it out, you had 2 apiece for Plano East, 3rd largest, and Wiley, the 8th. So outside of first place, the largest school in the district had the most, and the school with the smallest enrollment had the least. Those are the only real consistencies. Everything else was pretty much kind of backing up the idea that there was a lot more parity in this district than people might have realized. Brian, kind of turning the page to Frisco ISD, again, a district that has just the complete opposite from a structure standpoint. These between the 8 Frisco schools that occupied 13-5A last year. We talked about the gap between Plano Senior and McKinney, the 4th and 5th largest schools, is more than 2,000 kids.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, the gap between the largest Frisco school, which according to the most recent figures, Centennial, with 2,024 students, in Frisco, 1,527, little over 500 kids. So just kind of, but in your time covering that district, just kind of how does kind of enrollment impact Frisco ISD from an athletics perspective?
What's Allen's enrollment?
66, 64.
Something ridiculous.
You could fit almost 5 Friscos in Allen. Just enrollment.
Just Frisco High?
I multiplied it by 4. Yeah. Frisco's enrollment figure, which is 1,527.
Yeah.
Multiplied it by 4, it's 6,108.
Wow.
And so that's less than 4 Allens, or that's mind-boggling. So it kind of showed in Frisco's play this year. They only made the playoffs in one sport, but it wasn't so much a factor for Frisco Reedy, who's 7th on the list, just 300 kids more than Frisco. They made the playoffs in 6 sports. Yeah. They dominated in a lot of sports. Girls basketball, volleyball, just to name a few. So it really didn't affect Reedy as much as it affected other teams like Frisco.
And I mean, just looking across, because I did the same research project for Frisco ISD as well, and you have, like I said, Reedy, the second smallest school in the district, made it 6 times. You have Wakeland, which is the 4th largest school in Frisco. They made it 6 times as well. Then you have Centennial, Lone Star, the top 2, from an enrollment perspective. They each made it 5. Liberty, the 3rd, made it 4. So that's, just right there, though, you have 5 of the 8 schools made the playoffs in at least half of the bracket sports.
Yeah, it's pretty evenly well distributed, and I thought it was interesting that Lone Star went from, what did they go from 8th to 2nd in just 2 years in enrollment, and they've dominated in a lot of sports. Maybe it could be because the enrollment spike. Right. They get a lot of kids from Little Elm. I think in 2017 it was like 40-something% of their students actually live with a Little Elm address. So maybe that could be a factor. But you look at Wakeland, 4th in enrollment in the district, and so many district titles. I'd have to go back and look at the research how many district titles they won. But the 2 state titles in boys and girls soccer, they're competitive in every sport. Made playoffs in 6 different sports. So enrollment is a factor, and then it also isn't at the same time in Frisco.
Yeah, I think just kind of the general vibe, just kind of build on what you were saying initially, Taylor, is that yes, obviously to a certain extent it does matter, because like you said, it is just simple, just a game of probabilities, and just being able to draw from a larger talent pool that just increases your odds of being able to field a more competitive product. Right. But at the same time, to simply just, you can only take that so far, because at some point, to simply just say, they had more kids, they should win. First off, that just diminishes the impact of things like coaching and just the general culture of an athletics program. Just the
superstars.
Yeah, the role.
It only takes one superstar to come in and impact the team. You don't need 6,000 kids to draw from if you end up with the next.
Now, what sport are we talking about here? Basketball, you can just use one superstar, or volleyball, but
I think football, I think that's also probably a reason why Allen football is kind of the outlier. Allen has the numbers.
Sports where, because depth in football is different from having depth in baseball or something like
baseball,
that.
where you field a team of 9 players, or softball, it's one person, one stud pitcher, look at Lake Dallas and Mason Meeks, smallest team in their district by a pretty wide margin, but when you have a guy that you can run out every Friday and it's basically an auto win if you take care of business, it doesn't matter how many kids you have in your school, because you have a talent that comes through that kind of negates the impact of that.
Or in boys basketball with R.J. Hampton, Little Elm, just how one transcendent player can just lift an entire program up.
No knock on Rusty Siegler and the rest of that team, but R.J. Hampton has really put them on the map.
He's one of the top players in the country.
Absolutely.
That's what just in a sport, especially like basketball, where it is, easier for one, singular talent to stand out.
And that's on any level of basketball, from the NBA to college, high school, middle school, what have you. If you have a superstar in basketball, you're set.
I think it's also worth noting, though, that just the role that the athletes do play, though, and just the willingness to sacrifice and buy into that, that team called the willingness to sacrifice for the betterment of the team, which, let's be real, that's easier said than done, especially in today's, athletics climate, for sure. So, to simply reduce a school's, success to a numbers game, it's a bit of a narrow-minded approach, especially considering that, hey, we live in Texas, and this is a state that, tends to champion depth as one of the reasons why they have, some of the best, maybe the best high school sports in the country. So it seems a little contradictory then to decry otherwise.
What I've always wanted to see is the state champions in each class play each other, just to see what it'd be like. Have the 2A play the 6A.
Well, it's interesting because actually, speaking of Meeks, I talked to him this week for a profile, and he was at the All-State All-Star game, the Coach Association All-Star game, and he said they got down there early, and the 5 and 6A kids sat and watched the 2A through 4A game or whatever it was, and he was like, some of those dudes were, easily competing with us, better than us. It just depends on where you live. So it kind of goes back to, the same argument we just made, where it's about the athletes. It's about, maybe you have, a better culture. Maybe if you have 9 of the best baseball players, or you have 9 dudes that are completely bought into, one specific thing, then, maybe enrollment doesn't matter so much. And I would like to see that too. And I've always said that the lower classifications kind of hide some really, really impressive talent sometimes, and some really, really good teams, especially in, I guess, non-football sports, because football obviously is still a little different. But
look at Argyle. Argyle, they dominate in baseball, football,
everything.
Girls basketball.
They do, yeah.
And, in their non-district schedule, they play against Lone Star, and I'm talking about girls basketball.
Yeah.
They play against Canyon and other, 5 and 6A powers, and they beat them, or they're highly competitive with them. So I think, like an Argyle girls basketball team from, I think, last year, my first year here, I think they were the best team in the state, or they could have been, and they could have hung with the Duncanville and the 6As. So I think it's all about the kids, like you said, and the facilities, and coaching has a huge factor in that too.
So that's a look at enrollment, and just kind of the role, at least within just a couple of our districts, as far as the role that we kind of foresee it playing in the pecking order, and just how those results have translated over the previous school year. So we will pick this up right in just a sec with another entry from our question series after a word from this sponsor. Today's Student Athlete Spotlight is brought to you by Bavarian Grill, authentic Bavarian food and beer garden. Listed by the Zagat survey as the highest rated German restaurant in Texas for 12 years in a row. 12 years! That's 3 presidential terms. You can enjoy traditional and authentic spring favorites now, everything from appetizers like slow roasted ham hock and potato pancakes to entrees like bratwurst or breaded schnitzel. Bring your whole family for lunch and dinner. They are open Tuesday through Saturday, located off Parker and Highway 75 in Plano. Bavarian Grill. And now, let's get back to the podcast. And we are going to round this out with another entry from our ongoing summer question series. This is an entry for this coming installment, and that is simply exploring, let's talk about some teams that missed the playoffs in 2017-18 that we think will make the playoffs in 2018-19. That's always one of the, just the fun subplots for each sport, is just seeing potential bounce back candidates, which teams, took their lumps one year ago and have a chance to really kind of build on that and turn in a solid season 1 year later. So, there's a bunch of different ways we can go with this. Brian, what was an example that you kind of just immediately sprung to mind when you were thinking about this?
Little Elm football. I'm kind of a Little Elm homer, so I've been on the record for that, I'll admit. But Little Elm football, they went 7-3 last year. They started 3-0, and there's kind of this buzz like, oh, can Little Elm, beat Prosper, and can they be the district champs of 14-5A? They had some of the pieces. And then things just kind of fell apart. Lost to Lake Dallas, lost to McKinney North the last 2 games of the year. Didn't make the playoffs with a 7-3 record, which is absurd. Now they go into a district against teams that they struggled against a few years ago, the Frisco ISD teams, the Lone Stars, Wakeland, Centennials, what have you. But I think they have a legitimate chance to finish as high as 2nd. I won't say they're going to dethrone Lone Star, even though they lose MJ Rivers and Nick Bolton, all those superstars. But I think they can compete with Wakeland and a playoff team like Centennial from last year. They don't have to deal with Reedy. Reedy went to Division II, so that that makes things a little bit easier. But they will definitely be in the playoff mix, maybe as high as 2. If they win the district title, then you heard it here. I'm not predicting.
I'm sure none of our predictions will be wrong. We're clearly...
That's a bold proclamation. You're just considering Little Elm's previous history against the Frisco schools, and the fact that they are going to be in a much more competitive district top to bottom than in 14-5A.
So much better than they were when they were in that district in 2012 through 2014. So much better. They have a quarterback who's been a starter for 2 years now. He's going to be a senior. Their offensive line is pretty much all coming back, all district players there. They have one of the top recruits in the area, in Brandon Crossley. He's a defensive back. They're going to use him as, wide out, punt returner, kick returner, whatever. He's been getting offers from TCU, SMU, all these D1 schools around here and across the South and whatnot. So they're going to be an interesting team to watch.
It's right.
Definitely in the playoffs. Mark it down.
Taylor, where did you land on this?
I think that most of my experience since I got here was 6-6A, especially baseball and softball, and looking over those kind of those climates and where those teams are headed. I think that Plano West softball may be due for a pretty big rebound year. I think that this year was a little bit of an anomaly in the fact that they lost Tatum Boyd early, Stanford commit, Plano West superstar softball player. She went down really early in district and missed several games in a row. I think they lost 6 in a row after she went out, so it kind of just derailed the entire season. But that team was young anyway. I mean, there's a pretty large sophomore class there, pretty large just underclassmen contingent in general. Boyd and Elisa Rosado will be coming back for their 4th years on the varsity at the varsity level. They played varsity every single year there. They're leaders. They kind of make up the core of that leadership group. And I think that this was a down year that was caused a lot by things kind of outside of West's control. I think they were young and a little bit inexperienced. I think Boyd's injury, like I said, just completely threw everything off the rails. And they have her coming back, Rosado coming back, a lot of girls that kind of got their first taste of varsity and have now gotten their legs underneath them a little bit. They had an okay finish to the season after Boyd came back. They were competitive in a lot of games when she came back, and she couldn't even hit at that point because she broke her finger, and it was still not in a way that she could handle a bat. But I think just with all that and kind of the pedigree of the program, they're not accustomed to having seasons like they had. I think that will kind of, and head coach Mike Letsom said as much, that it's already kind of fueling them and really pushing them to get back in. And I think the pieces are there. I think this was kind of a blip on the radar, not an indication that it's a program that's actually down.
It's when you kind of look at what kind of contributes to teams that are kind of in prime bounce back position, it's usually like you just mentioned, teams that are either young or have are steeped in tradition and just happen to have one of those years where just things just kind of went off the rails. And that was kind of thinking, because I have a bunch of different potential candidates, but this was it was a weird year last year for Plano West basketball in general. It was the first year since 2003 that both the boys and the girls missed the playoffs in the same season. And these are two, you talk about Plano West basketball, and it is as consistent as it gets over the years. But both teams were, on the boys' side, they were, like we just mentioned, very young. They only had one senior on the team, and it was a team that started off the year really hot, and then the collective weight of District 6-6A kind of got the better of them. Had a bit of an underwhelming home stretch to the to the district season.
When the state champion doesn't even win the district, that's pretty solid.
That's all you need to know about the district, yeah. But obviously they're going to have that experience though in their favor. They do have one of the top scorers in the area in Ryan Zambi, and it's a team that again they've kind of been through this before. Once they once their state championship team graduated the following year, and it was just a bunch of kids that hadn't really played many significant varsity minutes. You took your expected lumps, experienced your growing pains, but a lot of those kids were back the following year, and I believe they finished 3rd in the district, or 4th, I think it was. They finished 4th in the district, and then went on to upset the number 1 seed from District 5-6A in the postseason. So there is a template there for Plano West rebounding after years like this. With the Plano West girls, it's just a matter of just simply finding a way to just alleviate some of the scoring burden from Jade Owens, who is pound for pound as good a scorer as there is in the Metroplex. Could go for 30 a night on most nights, but even then, it was still a struggle to find other resources for offense. And in a district like 6-6A, where you had teams that were capable of offsetting Owens scoring with 2 players here and there, it was just that was a little bit tougher to overcome. So I think at least one of those teams is primed for a bounce back to get back into the playoffs. You can say the same thing on the football field with a team like Plano East and in McKinney Boyd, where Plano East just had just the season from hell last year with just all of the all the injuries that they incurred, especially at the running back position, which was kind of supposed to be their identity. They looked like world beaters in that second game of the season against Jesuit with Trey Hunter and Jonathan Meadow just running roughshod on the Rangers. And I believe that was the last game when both of those running backs were healthy and at 100% for the same time. So they were never ever able to really kind of get back on track and kind of build off of that performance, and largely because of just the injury bug. They were hit hard at running back with both Metters and Hunter sustaining injuries. They were hit hard on the offensive line, some of their key lines. So kind of their identity was really hamstrung by the injury bug. They do have a lot of experience back in their favor. Obviously, they do graduate those running backs that I mentioned, but quarterback Brandon Mallory's back. They do have just about every yard that they mustered receiving-wise last year. So it's a team that does have potential, at least offensively, to be among the better ones in 9-6A. We'll see what strides can be made on the defensive end. Obviously, they took their lumps on that side too, most notably giving up 599 yards to one player. But they still do have a cast of standout college-bound talents there too. Guys like Tyler Owens, Zach Wachiku, Josh Blagowski. So the talent is there. It's just a matter of now just bringing it all together, because it's certainly a team that does have the potential and should be able to at least get back into that playoff mix. And you could say the same thing for McKinney Boyd, a team that is not accustomed to to going without the going without postseason football.
Right.
And it's a team like they went through some some injury woes of their own, but it was also a young team, and they bring back a lot of. They actually had one of the better defenses, period, in District 6-6A. They do bring back some of the main contributors from that, notably defensive back Play Wyatt, and then on offense, they had to work through some injuries at quarterback last year, but Colin Drake got some experience under his belt in case he's called upon this year to come in relief for Christian Ziegler, who's the starter. So there is talent there, and Boyd should be primed to bounce back as well.
I want to backtrack. Ryan Zambi. I've heard a lot about him. Haven't seen him play live. I don't know if you've heard of Ryan Zambi, the Plano West star. He was before you came here.
Yeah, I think the first basketball game I covered was already in the playoffs, and it was like Allen and Duncanville girls or something. Okay. Yeah, I haven't seen much of them, no.
So where did he end up on the all-district list?
That's a good question.
He wasn't MVP?
He was not the MVP.
Because he was in there with 6-6A.
Yeah.
So it would have been Jalen Wilson.
It was probably first team. I don't have the list in front of me, but I would guess first team.
Is he getting any D1 looks anywhere? Not yet?
Not that I've heard yet.
Because I've heard a lot of good things about him. I remember Tim used to tell me all this stuff. But I'm seeing he's averaging 23 points a game. 35-inch. Sorry, I'm on a tangent about Ryan.
No, you're good. You're good.
I just wanted to bring that up. But yeah, so speaking with boys basketball transition, a team that I think could make the playoffs in Frisco ISD next year that didn't this past year is the Wakeland boys basketball team. They finished 5-9, 6th place, tied for 5th actually in the district with Frisco, and you're like, how are they going to beat out Lone Star, Heritage, Liberty, all those top teams right now? But they lose one of their top scorers in Mason Dukes, who graduated. But they also return, a freshman, Cooper Cisco, who's one of their top scorers. I think he was their second leading scorer as only a freshman. Jason Dukes, Mason Dukes' little brother, he's a sophomore. He's coming back next year. And this guy that really intrigues me is Austin Lewis. He's a 6'10", 180-pound big man. He's going to come back, be a junior next year. He was one of their big contributors. So I think Wakeland could also surprise some people next year on the court.
A couple other teams just kind of off the beaten path out of our markets that you keep an eye on as far as just potential bounce back opportunities. Flower Mound baseball missed the playoffs for the first time, and I believe Justin Thomas was able to uncover that it was maybe the first time ever, and if not ever, since the early years, since maybe the first or second year of the program. So it's been a long time. And this is Flower Mound, which has been one of the most consistent programs in the state for a long time.
Right.
So what are the odds that's going to happen 2 years in a row?
Yeah.
And then you look at a team like West Mesquite, which is kind of similar to Little Elm, as you mentioned, Brian. West Mesquite won 7 games last year and missed the playoffs with a plus 500 district record. So, that's just playing in a competitive district like 15-5A was. It was just the second time that the Wranglers had missed the playoffs since 2006. So, again, I just would play the odds game and suggest that does not happen, 2 years in a row. Let's see. Do we have any other candidates for bounce back, or is that just about do it?
I had out of 14-5A moving into 8-5A, Lake Dallas girls soccer.
Yeah.
I think potentially another case where it's just a young team, huge sophomore class, sophomore goalkeeper in Sydney Frazier, really, really good, and that's important obviously in soccer. You can build outward from the net a little bit if you have somebody back there that you can rely on not to take those mistakes and let them affect you negatively. So I think Lake Dallas girls soccer potentially just has a step forward. They lose Prosper. I think that's for a lot of those 8-5A teams that are moving over, just dropping Prosper is automatically going to increase the odds, because I think that was a program or a school that was ready to make the jump. They were dominating at everything. It was kind of Prosper and then everybody else fight for 2, 3, 4 just because of the nature of how good they've gotten. So I think there may be an opportunity for Lake Dallas soccer to jump up. And then back to previously 6-6A softball, kind of the opposite of Plano West, and a team that I'm really interested in seeing what happens is Plano East softball.
Yes.
Because I think that this down year for them and missing the playoffs was a lot, I don't know if a lot more drastic or a lot more detrimental is the word, but it definitely feels like a bigger missed opportunity for East, because now they're going to lose Amy Jensen, Bella Konecka, Gabby Lopez. They're losing a lot, so it kind of feels like they missed an opportunity this year to make a deep run after making a deep run last season. But at the same time, it's Plano East, and they're kind of another program that's always good, usually in the playoffs. They'll have Carson Armijo back as a junior. So there's potential there for them to kind of right the ship, just again based on pedigree. I don't think that they're and as good of a long-term position at the moment maybe as Plano West, just because they're a little older and they lost a little bit more. But it's a program that takes a lot of pride in making the playoffs and being a perennial contender. And I don't know if they missed the playoffs 2 years in a row.
So that's a look at some potential bounce back teams and teams that we think will make the playoffs. If you're missing it the year before, we'll see how many of those actually pan out. Obviously, if any
all of them.
Obviously, if all of them do, then we want all the credit and none of the blame. So, so basically, that'll do it for this edition of the Star Local Media Sports Podcast. Taylor, Brian, appreciate y'all for tagging along, folks. That'll just about do it. Y'all enjoy the rest of your week, and we will talk to y'all later.